The world is sinking, but Africa is rising. It's time for Africa to turn the tide of political conflict, economic uncertainty, and moral decadence. The time is now for Africa to arise and rebuild. Inspire E-Conference 2023 will give you the tools and strategies to be part of Africa's rebuild. Join us online this August from Monday the 7th to Saturday the 12th from 7 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. East African Time as we gather the brightest minds across the continent to discuss the rebuilding of Africa. Book your slot today and be part of the movement that will change Africa forever. Africa, arise and build.
Our next panelist is someone who I look up to greatly. Ivy was talking about who are we learning from. I think really pretty much our entire panel are people that I'm learning from. But this particular individual has had a career that has spanned more than 3 decades in the legal, in the human resource, as well as corporate governance space. And he's got experience in various roles, not only at Shell International across Africa, Europe, and Latin America. He's also developed a multidisciplinary expertise. Currently, he's a lawyer by profession, working as a governance and strategic policy formulation consultant. And his professional journey also includes serving as the Deputy Inspector General of the government of Uganda for more than 8 years up until 2021, prior to which he also held significant positions within Shell, such as an HR advisor and a team leader. But he's very well qualified too and has a Bachelor of Law, Masters of Law from Makerere University, as well as a postgraduate diploma in legal practice. And his academic qualifications are further complemented by some 2 honorary doctorates from esteemed institutions in the UK and the US. Outside of his career, he's happily married to one wife who is also a bit of a celebrity, and he lent her his name and she made it very famous as well. And together they have raised 2 adult children, a son and a daughter. Please welcome to Inspire Synergy 2023, George Bamugemereire. Uncle George, a very good evening to you. Good to see you. How are you today?
Very well, thank you. Just trying to make some adjustments. Yes, nice to see you, Ben.
Nice to see you too.
I'd like to thank you very much for this invitation. I'd like to thank Inspire for this vision and for the consistency and the planning and the way you've made this Inspire movement. Actually, you've turned it into a movement, a very strong and big movement and a transformational vehicle for Africa. So I'd like to thank you very much for inviting me here to participate in the panel. I'd like to also thank Ivy Mauko, who has really given a PhD course in human resources in 1 hour. Actually, Ivy, you've really knocked us off balance because I'm even wondering whether I should say anything. But now that I've been given the 10 minutes, maybe I'll pick 1 or 2 issues to build on. First, I'd like to say that my view about human capital in that is required in the marketplace to build Africa, I would start by saying that we are not the first people to seek human capital. Human capital has been a phenomena of change, a force for good and transformation in the world for centuries. Let's say from the creation of man. But as we stand, we probably need to paint a picture of the economy of the world. I was just looking up some statistics. Africa has 1.39 billion people with a GDP of 3.14 trillion as of 2023. The whole of Europe had a population of 748 million and a GDP which is 7 times as much, which is 24.22 trillion. Asia, with a population of 4.7 billion, has a GDP of 41.36 trillion US dollars. And then the United States, with a population of 331.9 million, has a GDP of 23.32 trillion US dollars. Just wanted to put those numbers out. And you can see that despite Africa having a population of 1.39 billion, our GDP is just 3.14 trillion. So the question is, why is Africa where it is? And many of you would have many explanations. There was colonialism, there was this, there was that, our resources were taken and so on. But I think we need to take a critical look, because I mean, a lot of these things are in the past, and we should be looking forward. And turning to the themes and the scriptures that have been shared by Inspire, Isaiah 43, verse 19, behold, I'll do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth, shall you know it? I even make a way in the wilderness. Isaiah 60, arise, shine, for thy light has come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. And then Nehemiah 2, 17, then I say to them, you see trouble we are in. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burnt with fire. Come, let us rebuild. I just want to put a question. Of these three theme verses, which call applies to Africa most? And I would like people to pop their responses in the chat room. Is it the behold, I do a new thing? Is it arise and shine in Isaiah? Or is it Nehemiah? And I said, you see the trouble we are in. Jerusalem lies in ruins. I just wanted to put that out there to see where Africa is based on the figures and everything that we know. Now, economists generally agree that economic development and growth are influenced by four factors. One, and the number one factor, is human resources. The number two is physical capital. The third is natural resources, and fourth is technology. Now, if we look at the big economies and we ask, particularly regarding the human resources, what have they done to get where they are? Because all the inventions, all the innovations, all the big buildings, everything we see, the wealth and so on, has actually been driven primarily by man. A human being has come up with a concept of how to start a mobile phone. A human being came up with the invention of the airplane. A human being came up with the invention of the ship, and so on. And so all these big, the radio, the television, internet, Zoom, all this that we are benefiting from, they were initially driven by human capital. So it's important that we focus on the human being. Now, what did these people do? What did the Western world, which is far ahead of us, do to get their human beings to be innovative, to be creative, in a way that has transformed their continents? I think the first thing that we see is that they have really focused on developing the human being. They studied their communities, identified their needs, and then figured out, what does a successful human being look like? What is a useful human resource look like? That's a profile that they constructed. And it's important that we too examine that question. What does the African innovative, creative, transformative Africa look like? To me, I see that as our challenge, the challenge of our century. Can we draw that profile? The profile of the African who can drive transformation, can drive development, and can drive change in Africa. Now, I was touched. I think I was an HR manager. Sorry about that. A number of years ago, and one time, my managing director came to me and said, I was HR manager in Uganda. He said, George, I'd like to ask you that for all future recruitments, I would like you to recruit people who have had exposure to the Western world, either through study. I would like to hire people who have at least one degree, whether graduate or postgraduate degree qualification from either Europe or America. And that thing really actually frightened me, because it dawned on me that I actually didn't qualify to work with this man. Because me, as you've heard from Ben, I studied at Makerere. And here I was being told, you are working in a multinational organization and would like to transform the culture of this organization. And one of the tools we'd like to use is for you to hire only people who have at least one postgraduate or graduate qualification from outside Europe, because I find the company too Ugandanized. Now that really touched me. So it dawned on me that the owners of this multinational company had a very clear idea of what a person who works with them should look like. And should be a person who is capable of thinking like them, or if you can't think like them, at least understand the way they think and the way they work. Now, for them, they do not create jobs for the sake of a job. A job is created to solve a problem. So if you are to be a useful resource and fill a position, then you must be a type of person who is selling a skill in order to solve a problem that brings profit to the organization. Question is, what are we going to do in Africa? Do we know what we actually need? Do we have that picture of the person that can help Africa rise from where we are, as we say, arise in this Inspire conference, Africa, rise and build. Looking back, we really don't have to reinvent the wheel. I like referring to the story of Daniel, because what our friends are saying is not new. This concept was actually started long ago in the time of Nebuchadnezzar. If you look at this story, it's many people are referring to it these days, the story of Nebuchadnezzar. And verse 2, Daniel 2:1-2 says, and Daniel delivered Joachim, king of Judah, into his hand, along with some of the articles in the temple. These he carried off to the temple of his God and put them in the treasure. Then verse 3, he says, then the king ordered Ashpenaz, chief of his court officials, to bring into the king's service some of the Israelites from the royal family and nobility. So this is the profile. He was trying to build the kind of Israelites that he wanted to work with him. So they must be royal family and nobility. Verse 4, young men without any physical defect. They must be handsome or good looking, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, qualified to serve in the king's palace. And he was to teach them the language in literature of Babylonia, and the king to send them food. I mean, that's the story. But King Nebuchadnezzar did exactly the same. He drew up a profile of the kind of people that would be useful to his kingdom. He wasn't looking for his kinsmen. Actually, these were slaves that had been conquered. But he says, among them, there are people who are already trained. Why did he look for nobility? He looked for people who are from the royal family and the nobility, because in general, the people in the nobility and the royal palaces are actually trained, and they are not trained in adult life. They're actually trained from the day they are born. If you are to be the king of England, from the moment you are born, there is a hierarchy who will come first and who will come next. And as soon as the child gets children, then they start rearranging the order and so on. So they start grounding you into becoming into a nobility as you should be, because you are going to face certain tasks and there are certain things that are expected of you by that community. So my challenge to us in Africa, where can we get those nobility? Where is that profile? And for me, my argument is we have to break down our current education system. We have to review our parental skills and be able to create this nobility. This profile, by the way, it works across the board. This profile that Nebuchadnezzar was looking for is something that applies across the board. We in Africa also need to be drawing what a good worker looks like And here is a template. But in the African context, who are these people? These have to be constructed by every family on earth. Every family in Africa has a duty to construct this person. Because, and when we do, in verse 17, it says, to these 4 young men, God gave knowledge and understanding, because God then comes in. You know, having got all these natural attributes, so things that you've got by accident of birth and so on. Verse 17 says, God comes and intervenes and gives knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning. So this comes together. There is a training. There are the natural attributes. There are the natural gifts that God has put in everybody. But then God comes in and says, in addition to that, then he gives a knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning. Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all skills. The market right now, Africa, even in Africa, is demanding a person who understands the African needs. What are the African needs? And then how can we construct that person who has the attributes that the African market demands? Because right now, most of us are having to fit into the profile of the Western world, because that's where we've been reading the GDP. The GDP dictates that we all gravitate towards a place where people can actually pay us decently, which is a very unfair situation. And I think our sister Ivy has already referred to that brain drain. Why does brain drain happen? It's because we have not been able to create an economy that can reward talent, and in other words, we can't even be able to be creative and transformative as we should be. So for me, my appeal on this, in the few minutes you've given me, is that we must examine what we can do to help our children, because I'm now looking at children, because I think our generation has not done well at all. I don't think our generation has served Africa well. We've not been able to transform Africa to a place where people can also be attracted to come and work for us. So we all go the other side, and that's why a man can come to Uganda and say, please, I only want you to recruit people who have been there, where I come from, who know how I think, who know what I should be doing. So to me, that is a challenge. We need to construct that person, and this happens by us investing in what makes good human capital. It is high quality education, jobs, skills that help develop human capital. There are some characteristics of success in the life of the children. One, we need to be giving active learning techniques. We need to be creating a learning environment. We need to be developing clear communication. We need to be developing good relations between the teachers and the students. And above all, developing people with critical thinking and problem solving, because that is what, that's the kind of resource, human capital, that we are looking for. If you go across the whole of Africa, what will you find? You'll find many adult human beings sitting on verandas from morning to sunset. Sometimes they're playing a game. Sometimes they're discussing local politics. Yet when you go to some cities, you don't see a human being, because everybody has been trained to do something. Everybody is doing something from morning to sunset. Then they go home, and because they are tired, but what are we going to do to transform our own communities so that people can be got off the streets and got from where they spend all the time and they become useful? I'll now finish. So when we talk about human capital, what do we mean? Human capital that takes you forward, one, requires communication skills. A lot of the people are being given opportunity, but they can't communicate. And that's the problem. We need good education, but education that is tailored to problem solving and critical analysis of the African problem, how to solve it. We need to be developing people with technical skills, because again, we have a lot of thinkers. They theorize about this, they theorize about that, but get a simple problem. In our house here, where I am now, sometimes there are times we've had no water, or maybe water is just trickling. And then, my wife looks at me Maybe we live with it for weeks until one time when we get time and we look for a plumber, somebody who studied how to adjust, and the man comes in 3 minutes, he somehow fixes that, and then water begins to flow. It always humiliates. I feel humiliated. But people are learning human technical skills, and then creativity. People have been creative. This person who came up with a mobile phone that you can now reach anybody and everywhere in the world. These are people who are creative and thinking, and we need that for Africa. We need to help people, to build people with experience and problem-solving skills, people with mental health, a subject which has already been dealt with by, I think, Dr. Ruth Senyonyi, and personal resilience. Then I will not go beyond that because I would like to leave time for the rest. But I think that to me is my contribution. How are we going to construct? How are we going to rebuild the African mind that can actually confront the African challenges for our century? Thank you.
The world is sinking, but Africa is rising. It's time for Africa to turn the tide of political conflict, economic uncertainty, and moral decadence. The time is now for Africa to arise and rebuild. Inspire E-Conference 2023 will give you the tools and strategies to be part of Africa's rebuild. Join us online this August from Monday the 7th to Saturday the 12th from 7 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. East African Time as we gather the brightest minds across the continent to discuss the rebuilding of Africa. Book your slot today and be part of the movement that will change Africa forever. Africa, arise and build.